So, what is Cleantech?
Well, it's not just batteries, if that's what you're thinking, right? It's not a hard and fast rule for clean tech. You know it when you see it. Ideally, these technologies improve sustainability footprints of their respective industries, but that's not always the case. I think what's pretty exciting about clean tech right now is we're seeing this convergence of capitalism, meaning these technologies are becoming profitable, and they also have that sustainability aspect. So more and more people are paying attention because they're realizing, hey, we can do the same or better at a similar cost, using less resources, using less energy, using less whatever it is. So it has this bonus of having that sustainability side, but actually these technologies are incredibly profitable.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think if we look back 5 years ago, we were seeing startups position sustainability first and figure out the economics of that afterwards. And if we look at the technologies that are coming up today, we've seen some really great companies here at the forum, but all of them are focusing on economics first and profitability first, and then putting sustainability as a bonus that makes perfect sense for these corporate or off-takers to hold on to.
So I have to ask the question because, if anybody's following social media right now, whether it be LinkedIn, Twitter, now it's X, I guess, somebody happened to say they think clean tech is dead. So, I don't know, are we dead?
I don't know. I don't think clean tech is dead because I work on the energy side, and everywhere across the world, you're seeing trends that are going to require energy and power, all these different types of power management tools, but also new energy generation too. So everything from fission, fusion, geothermal. Geothermal potentially saw an IPO this year. Fusion also another SPAC. So I wouldn't say they're dead particularly.
Yeah, also when we're thinking about clean tech, we're not just talking about mitigation technologies. There's also this whole world of adaptation that's cropping up. And since last year, it's just starting up there. So it's definitely not dead because we're adapting to all these climate change things that are going on, to extreme weather. They're getting more frequent, they're happening more often. There's really, really great technologies that are coming up to deal with extreme heat, to put out wildfires, to monitor floods. And these are technologies that, even though the tech has been there, they're now getting into this adaptation and climate use case. And so that side of clean tech is just starting up. We're just starting to see a lot of progress, a lot of profitability, and we're seeing really, really good business use cases there.
Yeah, and there's all this conversation about AI and data centers and whether or not that's clean tech, and I don't think we have to go down that route. But because there is this immense source of demand for energy that's also creating a lot of applications for these different technologies and innovators, but there's also applications for AI and a wide variety of other fields. So I know weather monitoring and extreme weather is a really big application for AI and other software tools and sensors.
Yeah, and if we look at the financial side, we see 5 years ago, to piggyback on that one, the amount of funding, specifically venture and equity funding that was going into these startups was left, right, and center. We would see deals of 5 million to 15 or 20 million being handed out quite regularly. And then it's, quite straightforward to think that if the venture funding appetite changes, that potentially the sector is not profitable and that these companies might not be doing what we're expecting them to. But if we look at where we're sitting today, startups are getting more intelligent with how they're layering their financing. They are starting to apply it to the stages that they're at. They've started to realize that equity is quite fragile if it's overused past when it was meant to fit your purposes. So if we think about the needs that you have in R&D, these don't translate to deployment, and so your financing at R&D has to change as you continue upscaling.
I'm even seeing some pretty exciting trends in the biopackaging space, where a lot of companies don't even need to raise equity because they have such great revenue streams just from their pilots and early deployments. They're not having to rely on equity. So, and they're kind of in the background, I think, a little bit, because a lot of our focus is on VC. So, we don't always pay attention to that side of things, but they do set a really positive precedent for other companies. Obviously, there's others in the biopackaging space that need to raise those VC funds. They set a positive precedent for them to come in and show their investors that this is backable and we do need this. And last we checked, our plastic problem hasn't gone away. So I don't know why we would assume that clean tech is dead. There's a piece of plastic in the ocean the size of Texas, right? This problem still exists.
And I'll say from this perspective of, there's always that consumer sentiment of wanting to be better, of trying to be better. It's really, really hard to kind of think about how do I make an impact? But to go to the corporation side where everything is, a commodity at this point, right? And there's a firm price point that these startups and these innovators have to hit, Well, hate to break it to you for those who are in that corporate space, the outside world is watching you and they are judging you. And part of that is not only are you going to be kind of stressed to find new solutions, new ways to do things cleaner, more sustainable, but now they're being competitive in that cost price range. So you made a really great point of this is 5-10 years ago, it was like, oh, we can do it in a cleaner process. We can be, use this and that, and your CO2 emissions that, and your carbon footprint. This is no longer a if or and, or if and or, this is now a you get this and, right? And if you look at, let's just talk about data centers and AI, there is such a huge insatiable appetite for a lot of the things that make up our everyday life that would power those things. These things are getting scarcer and scarcer. So now you have to learn how to be better with what you already have. You have to figure out how to be more circular with these things. You have to figure out how do you get more value out of what you already are mining or collecting or making. And that comes with the added bonus of being cleaner. So for anybody who says that clean tech is dead, the rumors of our death has been greatly exaggerated, if anything.
Do you think that there are any areas of clean tech that are like grossly underrepresented or maybe just like not necessarily taken into consideration as much?
Ooh. From my side, I always love following anything that, we daily use or look at. So you brought up a great one on the biopackaging side, right? Any of the kind of commodity things. So when we talk about profitability, we're seeing a lot of great trends that I have noticed in things like personal care and like cleaning and detergents. And again, petrochemical back, there's a really hard price point you have to make with that. But there are solutions coming online that are using CO2, that are using like biomass carbon streams, that are using a lot of really sustainable practices and kind of nature-based ways to get the exact same performance you would expect that's on the shelf, but at a really competitive price point too, and that works.
Yeah, I really like this point that you made about the things we use every day, because we were talking about this with a couple of different startups, that there is a real tendency to look at moonshot and one-off success cases, and I think we've had a habit of that in the clean tech space, to kind of bank the risk appetite or the funding energy to those one-off success cases. So we saw a string of bankruptcies about 2 years ago, and it followed into last year as well. And this really changed the appetite that corporates had to pull in, but also the funders who are providing significant loan packages. They don't like the words novel tech for the first time at scale. We know that. And so when we see these bankruptcies, it can be really easy to then pull the rug or pull back on a lot of the other new and upcoming technologies who have massive risk balances. But when we think about looking at repeatable scale, what we're talking about is these everyday products. We're talking about not the moonshot success cases, but we're saying the everyday startups who are making an impact today. So you mentioned like there's plastic the size of Texas sitting in our ocean, and some of the more steady technologies are going to be the ones that scale within the next 5-10 years.
Also, when we're talking about everyday things, water is a big part of clean tech. We need it to survive, and it's not talked about enough, but there's so much interesting tech, so much interesting innovation. The economics make sense, the business use case makes sense. It's a matter of scaling it fast enough, because you can't get to the point where places are getting to the point where it's super water stressed, they're running out of water, and you suddenly need to implement this tech. And then there's really good use cases as well, like in Singapore and like some parts of California, where like legislation is really pushing water tech, and that's going really well. And then when we're talking about AI and data centers, it just makes that water use case so much more, because they're cropping up in places like Arizona and Texas, where you're running out of water. So you need to kind of bring these things together. It's not just kind of just energy or just natural resources. It all kind of comes in together. And water, it's so important.
Yeah, everyone forgets about water.
I know.
I know, Buff, when you were in Texas at the same time when the winter storm Uri hit, and I can tell you from my side, I didn't lose power, thankfully, but I lost water, and it gave me such a huge appreciation for the fact that you can literally turn on a faucet and have fresh, clean water, ready to go for whatever you wanted to drink. I felt so gross not being able to clean myself or shower, and I have to think about, that's such a luxury in this space. And it's really hard to decouple what we're seeing in the Western world. You're talking about moonshots and where all the VC money and the investors are going, and that is not the case for the rest of the world. And it's really important to kind of take a look that when you think about clean tech, it's not just what can be the next Tesla or what can be the next, BYD or anything of that nature. There's areas where just being able to, have clean potable water, that's clean tech, right? Or being able to have power during night, like having a flashlight so you can do work there, that's a clean tech kind of technology that they need and that they're seeking that can be funded.
Yeah, clean tech won't be dead as long as we want to live on this planet.
Yeah.
I mean, those two go hand in hand.
And it has to be said, the U.S. is not the center of the world. There's fast-growing markets in Europe and Asia where these solutions are taking off, where solutions that you might not have considered as clean tech before, like what you're saying, are considered clean tech now. Biofuels are growing, fertilizers, something as mundane as fertilizer. The government of Sri Lanka was overthrown because its people couldn't access food. That's something that's becoming political now. So, just because, batteries may not be scaling as fast as we had hoped, doesn't mean, in any sense, that clean tech is dying. If anything, it's growing.
Yeah, it's not always just like, okay, when we think of clean tech, it's big, groundbreaking energy and EVs and all of those things. It's also just our absolute basics, water being one, but also just weather, being able to monitor weather better, forecast weather. That's not just like a day-to-day person problem. That's each industry. If you're dealing with logistics, if you're dealing with aviation, you're dealing with utilities, you need to be able to forecast weather better. And there's really, really good tech coming out with AI, ML, all of these tech advancements that are helping those industries forecast weather, and it's becoming part of their essential operations. It's just becoming a necessity rather than like a nice to have. Like, it's not just, oh, is it gonna rain and gonna ruin my assets? It's like, how much is it gonna rain? How can we change our decisions? How are our operations and assets gonna change to make space for these changing weather patterns? So it's your basics.
I'll say, I think a lot of the things that we're seeing in terms of the terminology happening right now too is like a big part of this. And so maybe 5-10 years ago, when you had people who were deploying, they love to say, oh, more sustainable, lower emissions, modular, all of these great, hot buzzwords. And you have to kind of pivot and change and think about, okay, in today's context, the policies, the geopolitics, all of that, I'm going to say modular. You are now going to be decentralized, right? You're going to decouple from a lot of the things and the issues that are stemming from, unfortunately, geopolitical tensions, trade wars, tariffs, all of that good stuff. Folks who are like, oh, I'm more sustainable. How about you're more secure, right? How do you actually onshore, reshore, friendshore, and build those relationships, not just internally within your own localities, your own countries, your own continents, whatever that might be. It's a shift in a mindset that maybe you're not paying attention to, but it's always existed, and it's always going to evolve and kind of adapt to what's happening in the space.
I was just going to add in something for VCs as well.
Yeah.
And you probably can add on stuff here, but when we're looking at just types of VCs that are popping up, it's not just VCs that are investing in batteries and energy storage and things like that. There's VCs that are specifically coming up for wildfires, like Convected Capital. There's water tech VCs like Burnt Island. There's adaptation VCs like Tailwind Futures, and they're bringing up really, really great investment thesis and making great investments. And so from the finance world, business world, it all just makes sense. Like what you said, there is money, there is profitability, and we're seeing that in the VC world as well with them bringing this up.
Yeah, and to tack onto that, I think something that we regularly see is startups experiencing a lot of pain points that they don't feel are represented by the VCs that they're engaging with. And so this is coming down many times to this difference in risk appetite, or how startups think about risk and how investors, project finance, VC, the rest think about risk. And ultimately these are very different, but I think it comes back to that point you said about the US not being the center, because we've followed the trends that are cropping out from the US and then letting them kind of follow and trickle into Europe, or follow and trickle into Canada, Asia, etc. But now what we're seeing is a completely different turn of it. We're seeing Europe take a stronger stance when it comes to investing public grant money into these early solutions. We're seeing in Canada, Folk Labs showing up to say it's not just about getting more funding to these startups, but it's about a whole coalition of partners and tools needed to get these first of a kinds to a second of a kind and repeatable deployment, right? So yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think there's a lot of room here to see growth in the financial tools available to startups.
And I have to tell anybody who's ever in this space, right? Obviously AI is a huge part of this area. I mean, how many billions of dollars that we see pour into materials discovery and all of these things in the materials and chemicals world. But clean tech is hard. right? This is not a software that you can just deploy, debug, and then get up and running on your cell phone or on your laptop, you know, the next day or within a week or within a month. These take years to actually evolve, to scale, to get reliable results, to get consistent results. And so as far as the funding is going, like, I'm really encouraged by a lot of things you said, Singh, that VCs are getting a lot smarter. They're getting a lot more focused on exactly what it is they want to actually invest in, and they're building that relationship, and they're committed to that time frame, right? This is a transition. This is not a sprint. I wish there was a silver bullet for everything in this space in terms of clean tech. Like, how many times have we heard nuclear is another 30 years away, right? Or anything of that nature.
But I love that conversation, because even if nuclear is 30 years away, you have the whole space analogy where it's like maybe the energy production is 30, 40 years down the road, but then you have all these advancements in AI for plasma detection and plasma monitoring. You have advancements for different types of controls, power units, high temperature superconductors, and they don't always have like very specific applications just in fusion. You can apply these technologies to the grid, to data centers, to numerous other applications. And I think whether the applications themselves are clean tech or not is up for debate, but I think that anytime you make anything more efficient and more advanced, like how you can structure it, can also have an incredible impact on sustainability and the climate.
So
I think
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that makes so much sense in so many parts of what we see when we're working, that like dual value use case, because we also see a ton of defense tech that like 10 years ago it was only for defense and manufacturing, and now that's climate and clean tech, because like when we're looking at satellites, that's not just a national security thing. You need that to monitor wildfires and floods, and for agriculture and water monitoring. That's like your baseline now for so much of Earth observation and so much of just like monitoring what's going on our planet, which is so important to then make actual decisions. So it's like maybe technologies that used to be something else, they're now clean tech, and that's exactly what we look at and work on.
Maybe to wrap it up, Paulo, is clean tech dead?
Nah.
Is it?
Absolutely not.
Is clean tech dead?
Its definition is ever evolving. Where before it was pretty basic.
Just say no.
Just say no.
Say what you want to say.
I'm saying what I want to say. Or before, I think, you know, the definition of clean tech was pretty basic, and people just thought, you know, sustainability. Now it means so much more.
Yeah, and I think the definition of clean tech is too broad to be considered dead.